Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys doing? I'm joined with the esteemed, with the real man, with the champ, with the heavyweight champion.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You got too much tea, too much caffeine, too much chili.
Yeah. But he couldn't be here today. I'm only joking, man. Alaikum salam. How you doing? You
Good,
okay?
bro. Good to hear from you. Good to see you.
We're coming back to the new atheists. You delivered to one of them maybe 7 years ago a pretty good spanking. Yeah, Leos. What's his name again? Leon Krauss. What's his first name? I forget. Lawrence Krauss. How do you feel about that debate?
You know, it was good, given the circumstances and my learning at that time.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances and the learning, my pathway of development at that time. Obviously, there's many things that I think I could have said that was more articulate. It was better in terms of the way the audience would understand it and to really portray that Islam is true and that atheism is false. But generally speaking, I think it was a very, very positive debate on balance. But I'm going to do a video, inshallah, with our beloved brother, Zishan, Smile to Jannah, on 7 years on from the debate. And we're going to do a bit of an assessment and analysis of it.
I think that probably was the most popular atheist-Muslim debate in the last 30, 50 years that I know of.
I think it still is, yeah, from a numbers point of view on YouTube.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. So it would be good to get your insight on that.
Absolutely.
But talking about famous atheists, we wanted to speak about something that Richard Dawkins has been coming out with his deer tie that he comes out with. You know, he's got a tie with a deer on it. Yeah. And speaking about, which is AI, artificial intelligence. Let's just watch quickly some of the stuff that he said about AI and giving AI robots rights. And then we can comment on that.
We reach a profound philosophical difficulty. I am a philosophical naturalist. I am committed to the view that there is nothing in our brains that violates the laws of physics. There's nothing that could not, in principle, be reproduced in technology. It hasn't been done yet. We're probably quite a long way away from it. But I see no reason why in future we shouldn't reach the point where a human-made robot is capable of consciousness and of feeling pain. This is profoundly disturbing because it kind of goes against the grain to think that a machine made of metal and silicon chips could feel pain, but I don't see why they would not. And so that this moral consideration of how to treat artificially intelligent robots will arise in the future, and it's a problem which philosophers and moral philosophers are already talking about.
So as you can see, he obviously thinks that on his worldview, materialism, that philosophical naturalism, that he thinks that robots or AI can have consciousness.
Yes.
And that because of this, they should be given rights. What is your response to that?
Well, I don't want to go into the whole rights and the whole morality stuff.
Okay.
The reason being because that is dependent on your understanding of AI being conscious and what do you mean by AI being conscious.
Yes.
And that's why I have my phone out. It was not to be rude because I have notes on this, yeah?
Right.
The first thing we need to address, I think, is Richard Dawkins says that he's a philosophical naturalist. Now, I find that very interesting, bro, because philosophical naturalism is not really scientific per se, and he comes across as someone who promotes some kind of public scientism, right? That science is the only way to render the truth about the world and reality. Okay, maybe that's a hard form of scientism. Let's make it a bit more softer. Maybe he says science is one of the best ways to render the truth about the world and reality, yeah? However, philosophical naturalism is more of a philosophy rather than anything scientific. So he says he's a philosophical naturalist. What does that mean? That means that there is no divine, there is no supernatural. Everything can be explained by physical processes or reduced to physical things in some way. Now that is very interesting because that's a faith. Remember, he says, I am committed to. Now the prominent atheist philosopher, Michael Rules, he says, if you want a concession, naturalism is a faith. Because you have to believe it as a lens in order for you to see through, in order to understand the world and reality. So he already comes with the presupposition that there is no God. He already comes with the presupposition that everything can be explained by physical processes. That's his starting point. Those are his lenses in which he sees through to understand reality. So he's admitted something here. This is my faith. I'm a philosophical naturalist. So therefore, even though I know nothing about AI, I'm going to assume that AI is going to be conscious. And I'm going to assume that it must be given rights. That is a really unnuanced, ridiculous way of starting a video about AI. The discussion shouldn't presume philosophical naturalism to be true. And when you watch the whole video, you see that really they are presuming philosophical naturalism to be true. And in the context of AI and consciousness, they're presuming a physicalist understanding of consciousness, which basically means that consciousness can be reduced to or is identical in some way to physical processes.
So how do you define consciousness, and what needs to be in place for consciousness to work?
Oh my God.
Because I think we need to, cover this ground.
Okay, this is a big question, but let's apply it to the AI scenario. So I think what they're trying to say is that AI machines or computer programs or robots, whatever the case may be, they are going to be indistinguishable to human beings in some way. Okay? When it comes to consciousness, when it comes to intelligence, when it comes to interaction, to the point where Richard Dawkins even says, even concerning pain, right? And this is the point that we need to zoom in on. We don't have a problem with certain aspects of consciousness, such as thoughts or, cognition or intelligence, right? Because these are connected to consciousness as well. What we're talking about here is that can artificial intelligent machines, can they have inner subjective conscious states? Can they have something called intentionality? Okay.
Which is?
Now this is quite broad in the philosophy of the mind, but generally speaking, intentionality means, and is connected to meaning, it means that your reasoning is about or of something else. Okay, so say I'm reasoning about Muhammad hijab. I'm talking about Muhammad hijab, and I'm reasoning about you. I know that I'm reasoning about something other than myself, and other than the sounds and the words that I'm using. It is of and about something external to me. Now, we can safely say that robots or AI machines don't have an ability to do that. Because really, robots and machines are about just rearrangement of symbols, right? The symbols don't know that those symbols are about or of something external to the symbol itself, right? Because fundamentally, computer programs are based on zeros and ones, right? Fundamentally. So do the zeros and ones, do they know that they are addressing an entity, a conscious sentient entity called Muhammad hijab? Do they have intentionality? No, it's just zeros and ones. And this is an arrangement of zeros and ones. The zeros and ones are not of and about Muhammad hijab. Or rather, the zeros and ones don't know they are referring to something called Muhammad hijab that's external to them, right? So this is, generally speaking, intentionality, and it relates to meaning.
I think that's a really good point.
That is a good point, but the thing is, it's very vast and there's lots of discussions.
No, but that's a good way of putting it, because you're saying that robots will only be able to interact with symbols directly, but wouldn't be able to give meaning to those symbols.
Good. So this is the point here. So computer systems just manipulate symbols. They can't attach meaning to the symbols. So this is syntax and semantics. So let me give an example. The difference between syntax and semantics. So we have here 3 sentences, right?
Yeah.
One in Greek, one in English, and let's do one in Turkish, right? So it's I love you. Right. Se agabo, which is Greek, I love you. And you have seni seviyorum, which is I love you in Turkish. Now, as you can see, the 3 sentences have the same semantics. They have the same meaning, but they have different symbols. So what do we learn from this? Well, take this. If I were to give you all of the symbols of Greek and teach you how to arrange them in the correct way with the right spaces, right? In the right kind of grammatical formula, whatever the case may be, by virtue of you doing that, would you know the meaning?
No.
Exactly. So that shows there's a difference between just merely rearranging symbols and understanding the meaning connected to the symbols and attaching meaning to the symbols, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an interesting argument that I think Professor John Searle, he developed, and I've adapted it here, is number one, computer programs are syntactical. So they're based on syntax. Number two, minds have semantics. Number three, syntax by itself is neither sufficient nor constitutive for semantics. Four, therefore, computer programs by themselves are not minds. For example, just imagine an avalanche, bro. There's an avalanche in some famous mountain, say in the Alps in France, right? And the avalanche, when it basically creates its mess, all of a sudden you see rocks that are arranged, and it says, you know, my name is Mohammed Hijab and I'm over 6'5" and I love wrestling and I'm a debater, right? So now the mere arrangement of those symbols, right? So the mere arrangement of those symbols, does the avalanche know the meaning?
No.
Exactly. So the mere arrangement of the symbols itself doesn't give rise to the meaning. So if a sea, right, if the tide was coming in and out, and as a result of the tide moving, you see an arrangement of sand that says, I love my mother, I love my parents, does the sea know the meaning of those symbols?
Mm-mm.
No. So the mere arrangement of those symbols in a particular way doesn't necessarily give rise to meaning, because the sea doesn't know how to attach meaning to the symbols, and the avalanche doesn't know how to attach meaning to the arrangement of rocks that for us has meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Okay, so this is good. So you can't ever prove that. Do you think there's ever a chance?
No, so here's the point. So the point is AI machines,
Yeah.
they're just complex syntactical arrangement, not
They
semantic.
can never. You're saying that it's not possible for them to.
They can't attach meaning
Attach
to the
meaning.
symbols, yeah?
Why not?
Because of what we just discussed.
Mm.
So, for example, if an avalanche were to
Yeah.
come and somehow arrange a bunch of symbols that says, I love Smile to Jannah, it's the best channel in the world, please subscribe now,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't know the meaning of that.
That's
It's-
meaningless anyway.
but you see my point, yeah? So let's break this down further. So your question really has opened the door to Professor John Searle's famous Chinese room experiment. You ready for this experiment?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've heard of this before, but just go through it again. 'Cause
Yeah.
I
So
always
say,
need this
so
to
say
explain
this
to me.
is a room. This pillow.
Right.
Can you see this pillow, sir? This pillow is a room. You are in this room, Hijab. Okay.
On the side.
You're
I'm
inside. You're inside. Yeah. You right with that?
I'm okay.
Good. So you're in this pillow, but it's a room, and we call it the Chinese room. In this room, there is a rule book, but it's only in the English language.
I'm alright with that.
Yeah, and the rule book says, when you see this Chinese symbol and this Chinese symbol, then you give this Chinese symbol. You don't know what the symbols mean. It's just giving you a symbolic representation, right? Here are the Chinese characters. When you see this Chinese character and this Chinese character, then give us, or give outside of the room, this Chinese character, yeah?
Okay.
Outside of the room are Chinese speakers, for example.
Yeah.
And they give you questions. Okay, this is an adapted version of the thought experiment, but it still works. They give you questions in Chinese.
Yeah.
So they don't know who you are. But you take the questions in Chinese and you read the English rule book. And you say,
Right.
okay, I've seen this Chinese character. I have no idea what it means, but I've seen this Chinese character and this Chinese character. And the rule book says I have to give this Chinese character. So you're giving all the right answers out. So for the people outside of the room, do they think you know Chinese?
Yes.
Exactly. But do you know Chinese?
No.
Exactly. So this Chinese room thought experiment represents what happens to the AI machine. They just have syntactical arrangement. It's a manipulation of symbols, not meaning. Now, there is a response to this. It's called the systems reply. John Searle calls it the systems reply. Some people say, yeah, you as Mohammed Hijab may not know the meaning, but the system itself knows the meaning. And John Searle replies and says, well, how can that be the case? Because there is no way of the system attaching meaning to the symbols in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And you could even extend the thought experiment by saying that this whole system could just be in your brain, Mr. Mohammed Hijab. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You could know how to manipulate all the symbols and always give the right answer, but does that mean you know the meaning of the language? No, you just know how to basically put different things together. Like, for example, I could teach you right now Greek, right? So if someone says boss ise, okay?
Boss.
Yeah.
Boss is fine. You don't need to add anything to it.
So if someone says boss ise,
Yeah.
yeah, you should reply Miahara Efcharisto. Say Miahara.
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 Relax. Miahara.
Miahara.
Efcharisto.
Afghanistan.
Efcharisto.
Afghanistan.
Okay, so let's do this. Ready? Boss ise.
Miahara. Afghanistan.
There you go. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
No. The point is you don't know what I'm saying, yeah? So
you just said to me, how are you? I said, I'm very good.
How did you know?
I just...
You spoiled the experiment. Okay, anyway, for the audience, you know what I'm saying, yeah? So I could
I
teach you...
don't know. That was a guess.
Okay, that was a guess. Exactly. So the point here is, I'm just giving you symbols, but in the form of sounds, and I'm teaching you what sound to give me back. Just because you know the kind of syntactical, symbolic arrangement, whether it's written format or in sound in waves, whatever, right? It doesn't mean you know the meaning, right?
Meaning is
so
big.
I could train you to come to my house, my mom's house, and she may give you like 5 sentences, right? And I could train you to respond in a particular way that may make her realize that she thinks that you know Greek. To the point, we could manipulate the whole thing and say, after those 5 sentences and you responded so well, you could say in Greek, "Oh, I need to go. My mom's calling me."
I see.
Yeah, so you could escape the room and you're not questioned any further.
I see.
So the point I'm trying to say is we can train you to come across as knowing Greek, but you have no idea what's going on.
Do you know?
Just by virtue of you've just arranged. You just know the program. Do you see my point?
Yes. So that's why. So you said intentionality.
Yeah. So let me just go back into my notes, because there's another response to the Chinese room experiment, which is very important for us to. So concludes, having the symbols by themselves, just having the syntax, is not sufficient for having the semantics. Merely manipulating symbols is not enough to guarantee knowledge of what they mean. Okay, so obviously there is lots of discussion concerning this issue in the philosophy of the mind.
It's really interesting in the Quran,
yeah.
When the angel said, Allah says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. He says that he taught Adam all the nouns, all the names, and then Adam reflected it back to the angels. But the words he used, أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ, give me news, literally from Naba, give me news of what these words are, if you are truthful. So it's not just regurgitation, it's telling me what this is about. It's about meaning as well.
Yes, well, some of the exegetes, they even said that this is not just labels or terms and nouns, this is also the concept of things, which is about meaning, which is very, very interesting indeed.
Like abstract nouns.
Yeah, but the kind of exegesis of the ayah here is it wasn't just that, it was about the concept behind these things, which is very deep. So, if people want more information, they can go to sapiensinstitute.org, go to read, and there's answers. There's an answer called "Does AI Undermine Religion?"
We'll put it in the description box.
Yeah, and you got more information on what we just spoke about. But just to summarize, computer programs don't really have intentionality. So AI machines don't have intentionality. The symbols that they have in their programming, the symbols don't know that it's about something or of something outside of the symbol itself, right? It's just a symbol. And that is connected to meaning. And we know that computer programs manipulate symbols, not semantics. It's syntactical arrangements, not semantics. And we gave the example of the 3 different ways of saying I love you, Sagabo, Seni Seviyorum. It has one meaning but different symbols. And if I gave you all the right symbols of the Turkish or Greek language to put them in the right way, just by virtue of arranging them in the correct way to produce the words equivalent in that language of I love you, you would never know it means I love you, because you just know the symbols. There's no way of you attaching meaning to the symbols, right?
Yeah.
And then you asked me what is meaning, which was a very deep question, and that opened the door to the Chinese room thought experiment. And the Chinese room thought experiment actually shows that actually you can computers manipulate the symbols, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have the semantics, right? It's not just by virtue of you being able to manipulate the symbols doesn't mean that you now know the meaning. And this differentiates between weak AI and hard AI. So weak AI is, yes, computer programs can be very intelligent. They may even pass the Turing test. The Turing test is basically this kind of test that was developed. It's like a game that this computer and human being are having a discussion, and there's an outsider that basically needs to try and differentiate which one's the computer, which one's the human, something like that. But that's not a very good test, and there's a lot of contentions behind it anyway. But the point is, you may even pass the Turing test. You may talk to an AI machine and think it's a normal human. That doesn't mean now that AI machine is conscious in the way that we just spoke about. It just means that they're manipulating the symbols really, really well. Even when they're talking about things like machine learning in AI, right? Machine learning is just complicated syntactical arrangements with more complicated syntactical arrangements. And they're just reduced fundamentally to zeros and ones, which don't have intentionality, right? So this difference between hard and soft AI. So soft AI they could be very intelligent, more intelligent than human beings, and we've seen it on popular media. And there's a really good YouTube video by Smarter Jannah on the conspiracy of AI and stuff like that. And you see computer programs can be far more intelligent than human beings. But that doesn't mean they're conscious in the way that we just discussed, that they have inner subjective conscious states, that they can feel pain, that they now can attach meaning to symbols. So if they can't have that type of consciousness, why are you even talking about rights in the same way that you talk about human rights? That's my point. So don't come across with a physicalist, philosophical, naturalistic presupposition here that yes, one day they are going to have rights. I did say to Zishan a few hours ago, I said in 10 to 20 years you're going to have people marrying robots. Yeah, and when you turn a robot off and with the intention not to turn it back on kind of thing, it's going to be like murder. That's the gist of our conversation. So I think that's going to happen. You had nothing wrong with Japanese people, but there was a Japanese person, he married a manga cartoon. A manga cartoon, bro.
Yeah, no, I don't know what that is.
You don't know what a manga cartoon is? It's just a cartoon.
Oh.
He married a cartoon.
Anime.
It's like anime, yeah. Would you believe it? So there's a difference between hard AI and soft AI. So soft AI, yes, computer programs and AI can be very, very intelligent, and it may even pass a Turing test that it could sound like a human being and sound conscious, but it will never truly be conscious because AI machines, there is no such thing as hard AI, just from a philosophical point of view, because of intentionality, because of syntax and the semantics discussion that we just had. And yes, this discussion continues. There's also debates on this. We're not giving you the full nuanced picture, but it's a good starting point for you to understand that fundamentally, you have to understand when you watch videos like this, they come with some philosophical lenses and presuppositions. As Michael says, the faith of philosophical naturalism. They have to presume that physicalism is true. They have to presume that philosophical naturalism is true, and therefore say, maybe they can become conscious in the way that we did discussing, and therefore we should give them rights. But before you get there, let's have the real philosophical discussion. Can they really be conscious in the way that you're thinking? Is philosophical naturalism true from this point of view? And is physicalism true as an approach to the philosophy of the mind? And that's the debates that's continuing, and hopefully we're giving you some insights for you to do further research and go to the link below or wherever, to read a little bit further concerning does AI undermine religion.
With that, guys, thank you for watching.
Habibi,
thank you. With that, guys, make sure you do what the man says. And go down to the inshallah to the description. There's lots of things that are coming out. The book that I've written called Scientific Deception of New Atheists is also free of charge on the Sapiens Institute, so make sure you go and download that. It's free of charge. I'll put a link in the description for that. There are things that are coming out free of charge, webinars that we're doing on a weekly basis that are free of charge. So everything there is going to be, once again, free of charge. So make sure you go and visit that website. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.